Zero air. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Tomás Bieda. I'd like to welcome you to this fourth meeting of Progeny and the 3 de Febrero University. We would like to thank those who are listening to this broadcast right now, and I'd like to thank our remarkable panel members. Today, we have a very remarkable topic, a crucial one that has to do with everything related to nuclear industry. It has to do with the social license, the social permit to operate. We have a very varied panel of experts with lots of experiences. We have 4 very good presentations, and as is usually the case, we will get questions and we will try to have it as interactive as possible. Without any further ado, I'd like to directly give the floor to the first speaker, to the first presentation that will be presented by Zuzanna Jaworowski. She is a consultant of the General Consultant of the International Atomic Energy Association. She's an advisor of the quality program, Zodiac. It deploys nuclear technology around the world in order to promote and stop effort to stop COVID-19 and other animal-borne diseases. Before working in IAEA, she served as senior advisor for policy and communications at the U.S. Department of Energy's Office of Nuclear Energy. In that role, she was the liaison between the Office of Nuclear Energy and the Secretary of Energy and the White House. She provided political and strategic leadership to the office and managed outreach and education efforts in the civil nuclear energy area. She also served as chairperson of IVNET. It's an association bringing together 65 governments dedicated to collaboration for the peaceful uses of nuclear energy. She was also a vice chairwoman for C3E, Clean Energy, Education and Empowerment, promoting gender diversity in clean energy ministerial. Prior to working at the U.S. Department of Energy, Zuzanna served as the Indiana State Campaign Director for the Trump-Pence campaign at the Indiana State, and for over 15 prior years to her position, she had her own consulting businesses where she provided communications, government affairs, market research, and strategy guidance to clients in energy, education, and consumer products. She was married to Steve Jaworowski for 30 years, and they have 4 children. Zuzanna, the floor is yours. You are welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. So I'll share your screen. And please, Zuzanna, remember to unmute yourself now.
Thank you, Tomás. Muchas gracias. Hola. Hola, and good day to mi amigas and amigos all over the world and certainly in Argentina who are watching this presentation. It is absolutely my pleasure to be here today and to be communicating with you. I also have to say thank you to my dear friend Julian Godano, who I got to know very well through the chairmanship, and he was chairman of the IFNEC organization the years prior to myself, and we worked together very well, and Julian is a dear friend. So I want to acknowledge his leadership and appreciation for inviting me here today. So I'm happy to present on this topic of social license as it relates to nuclear energy. And I want to bring the perspective that I think that it's an important area to condense it to 3 main outreach efforts: education, communications, and finally acceptance. So if you go to the next slide, I want to give a little bit of background just quickly, and that is on what I'm working on right now, Zodiac at the International Atomic Energy Agency. Tomás, I just want to make sure that my slides are moving ahead. Are you able to do that? Okay, thank you, gracias. So I'm now with the Atomic Energy Agency, in Vienna, Austria. And one of the programs I'm working on is called Zodiac. It is a pandemic prevention program that focuses on animal and insect-borne illnesses, viruses and bacteria like Ebola, like swine flu, H1N1, and COVID. And they apply nuclear technology in order to eliminate these diseases while they are still in the animal kingdom before it moves to humans. And so this, I think, is very much outside of the realm of what you think of when you think of nuclear technology, but it is a very important application of nuclear technology. Zodiac, as one of several human development applications from the IAEA that include, as I mentioned, pandemic prevention, cancer diagnosis and treatment, water resourcing, clean energy infrastructure, addressing plastic pollution, and even food and agriculture, as well as gender diversity efforts. So it shows that nuclear has broad and diverse applications that have major implications on the social aspect of our lifestyle. So if we can move to the next slide, please. I want to give a case study from my time at the U.S. Department of Energy in the Office of Nuclear Energy. My boss, Secretary Rick Perry, gave me the goal of making nuclear cool again. And what that really comes down to is what we're talking about here today, gaining social license for executing on nuclear projects by engaging people, educating them through enlightenment and conversation. And so in this program, this case study, we wanted to create a two-way conversation with all of our audiences and educate them about the reality of nuclear, not based on propaganda, but rather based on the reality of what nuclear can bring to our lives. And so in that area, we focused on 4 markets: the youth market, and we developed millennial nuclear caucuses, the policymakers, where we did education lunch and learns, and also the K-12 outreach program, where we developed a curriculum for K-12 education, and then finally the general public, where we put together social media and press releases. So the next slide gives you a snapshot of our youth outreach. These pictures include shots from our Millennial Nuclear Caucus programs. These programs were a way of inviting young people to come to different environments. Sometimes it was held in a bar or a restaurant, and it was a happy hour with games and question and answers all about nuclear. And young people could come together and ask their questions that they had about nuclear. Often these questions revolved around challenges in the disposal and waste of nuclear, as well as the safety of nuclear. So if you go to the next slide, and then the one after. Thank you. There we are. So this is the Millennial Nuclear Caucus program. It's a two-way conversation with young people where we bring them together with subject matter experts, sometimes at national science labs, sometimes, as I said, in a bar or restaurant kind of environment, sometimes at university campuses, and often we would hold them at corporate campuses, like at General Atomics in California. We had an astronaut come and talk about the nuclear application to space propulsion programs. And so this was a way young people could come, ask subject matter experts about their programs, and then provide feedback to them, and they could have an ongoing conversation. Go to the next slide, please. The next slide talks about our outreach with policymakers. This highlights our Atomic Wings Lunch and Learn program. We brought a monthly lunch and learn program to Capitol Hill. Every month we would have Atomic Wings program. At lunchtime, we would invite members of Congress and their staff to come and have free hot wings along with a packaged lunch. And we had different speakers every month. We had speakers on small modular reactors, speakers on space propulsion, speakers on the peaceful use of nuclear, and applications like I'm talking about with clean energy infrastructure, pairing nuclear with renewables, and it helped to educate lawmakers, and they could be comfortable asking questions of these people who were experts in the field. Next slide, please. The next area is education outreach, and this is the K-12 program where it's kindergarten through 12th grade, and providing education that is based on reality and technology and innovation, and not based on scare tactics or propaganda, but the reality of what nuclear brings to our world. So the U.S. Department of Energy partnered with the Discovery Education Network, the Discovery Channel, and we put together a communications program also with the American Nuclear Society, something for elementary, middle school, and high school children and their teachers, so that we could teach them in an interactive, high production value, exciting environment that included digital programming and virtual field trips. So these virtual field trips would have kids showing other kids what it's like to work at the Idaho National Science Lab. And they went around the science lab. It was doing a virtual tour of the science lab. Another virtual tour showed the U.S. largest nuclear power plant at the Palo Verde plant, and how they recycle wastewater to use as a cooling source for the nuclear power plant. And then finally, our next program is going to feature all the space applications of how nuclear propulsion is used and nuclear energy is used in outer space. And so we're working, the U.S. Department of Energy is working on that virtual field trip. Next slide is the final application area, and that is the general public. It's really important for people to learn in a non-threatening, very easy to understand, simplified environment. So you can see here a couple of infographics and articles that our office used to communicate what nuclear is all about. On the left is the nuclear jobs in the United States, and it talks about how many jobs there are, the average salary, and the kind of education necessary. And on the right is an infographic that shows an article that we had written called The 7 Things That the Simpsons Got Wrong About Nuclear. This is a very relatable conversation that it draws young people in especially, and millennials, and senior people, and including baby boomers who grew up with The Simpsons, and they painted a really negative picture of nuclear. This campaign is an education, two-way communication through social media, where we were able to have a Facebook page, Twitter account, LinkedIn, YouTube channel, and then blogs on our website. And we were reaching over 300,000 people every week with this outreach. So you're going to the next slide. I just want to sum it up that this is how we approached it from the U.S. Department of Energy's Office of Nuclear Energy. But I would suggest to you that the key elements of any social licensing program when it comes to nuclear is to first know your audience, have a conversation, a two-way engagement conversation, and then have ongoing dialogue and engagement so that you're not just trying to feed propaganda or shut down questions that you may feel are irrelevant, but rather listen to what your audience's objections and questions are, and then be able to address them in an engaging and relevant way. So that concludes my comments. Thank you so much for having me today. I hope this is useful, and I'm happy to take any questions at a time that our moderator feels is appropriate.
Bien, muchísimas gracias, Susi, por esa.
Thank you so much, Susie, for this remarkable presentation. It's really very interesting. And I think it is very interesting. Well, the Simpsons reference is very interesting indeed, but as it seems, it might look as it is a joke, but it's not a joke at all. It makes us, it gives us food for thought, thinking about constant dialogue, you know, rather than avoiding discussions, but rather trying to face them and have constant discussion. So thank you very much, Susie, for your remarkable presentation. I'm sure several questions will ensue. By the way, to the people, I say, if you want to ask questions, send them via email to the email address conferenciavirtual@untref.org. untref.edu.ar, conferencia virtual at untref.edu.ar. We will keep going now with the next presentation. We will now give the floor to Dominique Mulliot. I'm sorry if my French is not that good. Dominique is the new president of the International Association of Women in Nuclear, Wind Global. Dominique is one of the most recognized business leaders in the French nuclear sector. She started her professional career as a chemical research engineer at the CEA at her country, leading projects for the French Ministry of Defense. Between 1979 and 1996, she held positions of product manager as well as sales and marketing directors in France and other countries in the fields of nuclear engineering and systems of nuclear measures for safety of facilities, workers, and populations. She also has held senior management positions in prominent groups. Currently, she is working for the Spanish group GD Energy Services as the vice president of such a group in France. She served as the chair of Wind France during 15 years. She has co-founded Wind Europe in 2010, and she is the president of Wind Europe for 6 years and a vice president of Wind Global from 2012 to 2016. Dominique, you may now take the floor, and we thank you so much for your presence here. So I'll share your screen, and please, Dominique, remember to unmute your microphone. And
Okay,
Suzanne, if you don't mind, please remember to mute yours.
It's okay? You hear me?
Thank you.
Yes, you hear me, all of you. Yes? Do you hear me?
Sí, yes. Sí, sí.
Yes, okay. So thank you to have invited me to this very important event. It's the first event to which I participate since I have been officially elected as new president of Wind Global, and it was 2 weeks ago, less than 2 weeks ago. First of all, let me introduce Wind Global, our association. Please, next slide. Thomas. Okay. So Women in Nuclear Global was founded in 1993. So we have a long existence, and we are today, we have about 35,000 members through the world, and we are represented in 142 countries belonging to Wind Global. We are a non-profit making organization of women working professionally in various fields of nuclear energy and radiation applications. Our members have a common commitment, which is to provide information and communicate with the public. Our mission is to develop a dialogue with the public, and Suzanne insisted on the dialogue with the public to promote awareness and education of the contribution of nuclear technologies to people, young people, and society. We contribute to knowledge and experience exchange between members and chapters, and we promote interest in nuclear engineering and different applications of nuclear among women and young people. And we have also another mission, which is to achieve diversity and in particular gender balance in nuclear science professions. Our vision, next, Thomas, our vision is, this is written in our charter since more than 25 years. And I think that this vision is totally related and in correspondence with the social license, which is the theme of our webinar today. Next, because I don't want to be too long. So to become this forum, we have 4 main topics: to permanently communicate through social networks, getting the public perception, to attract young people by means of Win Global Young Generation Group that we have created within our association, to be an active actor in the climate change debate, nuclear for climate, nuclear as clean energy, and to promote nuclear technology applications and their diversities through our presence in 142 countries. Next, so external communication orientated to general public, to demystify nuclear and radiation applications. Oriented to young generations, to have an active and direct involvement in the coordination and promotion of wind social networks. And our target is also women, to communicate from a gender perspective and to visibilize the contribution of women to the nuclear industry, and to raise awareness of the obstacles at every level through dialogues. Next, okay, we think that it's also very important to promote science and to attract young people in the science. We think it's very important to bridge the gap between the nuclear community and the society, and to be an open community. Of course, to do that, we want to develop audiovisual material with solid and attractive content, and to have a steady presence in different environments, key events in both fields of science, technology, innovation, and gender issues. Next, Win Global Young Generation has been created recently to attract and federate a young generation within Win Global, to promote nuclear sector as an interesting, technological, and innovative sector where they can find a first job and develop a career, to strengthen relations and collaboration between the international young nuclear generation and Win Global, to launch activities of interest for young people, mentoring, coaching, job opportunities, conferences, technical visits, a lot of activities able to attract young people, and to strengthen actions for supporting professional development of young women. I would like to mention an example which is very interesting that I have created 10 years ago in partnership with EDF. We have created an award which is dedicated to young ladies from the middle school up to the university. And we have also included professionals, women working in the nuclear industry. And every year we give awards to several ladies and students, and we finance a traineeship in a company to really federate them in the nuclear industry, and also to promote our sector and to attract these students. It's very interesting. We have now touched more than 2,000 young people, and it's every year very successful. And what we think is that it's very important that young people could speak to young people. It's the reason of our Win Global Young Generation. Then the next is to be an active and recognized. Next slide. We think that we have to be an active and recognized actor in the climate change debate. And Nuclear for Climate is a very important label. And we want to have an active role and contribution to the climate change debate. We have had the opportunity during the COP21 to write a paper which was read during the conference, and we intended to participate to the COP26 in Glasgow next year. Of course, we want to participate in key debates, conferences, events around related to climate change, because Win Global is also a network of experts, and we can bring really impartial analyses and opinions. Next one is, of course, to promote nuclear technology applications through our network in 142 countries. And for that, we have every year in each country, there are locally conferences in partnership with other associations, public orientated, really to develop the social acceptance of the nuclear energy. And there are examples of such local actions which have been developed by Win Argentina. So I could mention them, and if you have questions about these events, there is an attendant to our webinar who is a vice president of Win Global, recently elected as well, and who is Melina Belinko. So next, Win Argentina promotes a debate on climate change and participated to a panel discussion with female experts in collaboration with the University of Buenos Aires and the Faculty of Engineering. So I think it was also a very good example of a conference and event to promote the nuclear energy, and the students had the opportunity to participate to a technical tour to Lima site, and it was very interesting. Then Win Argentina was part of the global action Stand Up for Nuclear, which was a global initiative to engage and educate the public of nuclear's benefits and address widespread myths. Women led the action in Argentina and in Latin America to promote nuclear energy from a gender perspective, and interactive and playful activities took place, music, clown performances, and so on, games and movies, okay? And that's it. So it's what I wanted to report about the mission, the vision, and the actions of WIN Global. And I thank you very much.
Muchísimas gracias, Dominique, por esa.
Thank you very much, Dominique, for such an interesting presentation. I believe that you have brought along very interesting points that could serve indeed for long hours of very interesting discussion, especially the idea of demystifying some of the commonly held myths that are held up in the industry, promoting dialogue among peers. Sometimes when people are way older than you or way different, well, the dialogue seems to be different. But when there is a dialogue among peers, it is always very helpful so that the content of participation and the content of communication will be far better. I also liked a lot the idea of thinking about how to lay down bridges, symbolic bridges down to society, and having an idea of openness or aperture as a sector, which sometimes may have different images. So thank you so much for this remarkable presentation. We already are getting questions that are quite interesting indeed. So you will have to get ready for answering those questions. We remind people that if you are interested in asking questions to speakers, to send your questions to conferenciavirtual@utref.edu.ar. Thank you again, Dominique, for your presentation. We will now give the floor to our next speaker, Gustavo Jimenez. He works at the Institutional and External Relations Department in Nucleoeléctrica Argentina, utility in charge of the operation of Atucha 1, 2, and Embalse. He participated in several nuclear projects, including construction and commissioning of Atucha 2 power plant, the third and most recent nuclear power plant in Argentina. He studied biochemistry at the National University of Misiones, and before he moved to Buenos Aires, then he changed his career to studying communications and become a nuclear advocate. He's the co-founder and vice president of the Argentine Youth Nuclear Generation and Communications Officer of IYNC Network. He has traveled the world to promote the role of young people in the present and future of the nuclear industry. More recently, he successfully organized 2 international youth nuclear congresses in Argentina in 2018 and in Australia in 2020, Bariloche and Sydney, where he was in charge of the local organizing committee in 2018 and of international organizations in 2020. Thank you so much, Gustavo, for joining us. We will now give the floor to you and we will share your presentation. We give you the floor. Thank you, Gustavo. Thank you, Tomas, so much for your introductory remarks. Thank you for inviting me. It is my pleasure to share this panel session with such remarkable people in the nuclear field, especially since I've been given the possibility to talk about communication and social license. As people in the area of dissemination said, such as Zuzi and Dominic and Pilar. And I'd like to take advantage of this opportunity to congratulate Dominic on having been appointed as the chairperson of WIN Global 2 weeks ago. My message is that we at ACNA remain available to you to work together with WIN and reap successes, as has been the case in the past. Next slide. I'd like to get started by saying that ACNA is a multidisciplinary group. It is the Association of Nuclear Youth in Argentina. It was born in 2016 with the purpose of promoting integration and discussion among young professionals and students in the nuclear sector in Argentina. The premise is simple. How do we regard the sector as young people, and how can we contribute to improving it? We also had a natural purpose to disseminate nuclear technology with specific goals and purposes and contribute to the development of our projects, new nuclear projects in our country, by promoting a critical view. We are members of the community of the International Congresses of Nuclear Youth. It is a global network of young people who study nuclear technology. It provides a platform to promote the pacific use of science and nuclear technology and to exchange knowledge in areas such as climate change, gender equality, and diversity among young people around the world who get started to study the nuclear field. We basically started our path with a young group of people who were quite enthusiastic about nuclear technology. We should remember that they believe they can improve economy and fight against the effects of climate change. In this way, in order to achieve our goal, we understood right from the onset, and it was key for us actually. From day one, we understood that planning, communication, and dissemination would be key when coming closer to the non-nuclear public. An added value in ACNA members is the quality of their members and the capacity of working in a joint manner, both technicians, engineers, and communicators. We all know how relevant each profile is, and I should highlight this because in a multidisciplinary group, that generally is not easy to achieve, so to speak. Well, our first big project was to compete to be the hosts of the International Congress of Nuclear Youth. This would be a catalyst, and it would position us among the various groups of interest. The Congress is an event that brings together young people and future leaders of the international future of technology and the main leaders of the nuclear industry. The International Youth Nuclear Congress took place in San Carlos de Bariloche. We worked together with WIN, led by Dominic, and of course, the Argentina chapter of Women in Nuclear Argentina, and with representatives from IYNC. This was the first time the Congress, after 21 years of existence, to be conducted in a Latin American country. That was quite remarkable because it was the first time we included gender as a central theme for the future discussion of nuclear activity. Next slide. In this way, I should say the event was successful. This was measured by many indicators. The presence of undisputed reference, such as the Director General of OECD Nuclear Energy Agency, William Macwood, and representatives from the governments of Canada, United States, China, and Argentina. And it can also be measured by the number and diversity of people who traveled long distances to take part in the event, 410 people from 40 different countries, to be more accurate. We, from the onset, members of our association, perceived the need to have a space to coordinate among young people from various organizations and businesses that are part of the nuclear sector in Argentina. We also found the need to approach issues that had to do with the agenda of the nuclear activity as a whole. Next slide, please. Along these lines, we consider that social license is key for developing nuclear activities in Argentina. But what do we talk about when we talk about social license? Social license is defined as the approval of society or a local community or a group of interest, a stakeholder group, to carry out some activities. In industries such as nuclear, social license is key to promote projects and generate large-scale projects that will benefit society at large. This is not something that can be taken lightly. It cannot be achieved in a matter of weeks, nor is it a project that will necessarily coincide with the term of administration of a president. So if you see it under those terms, it will be doomed to fail because it will not achieve the effects that is intended to achieve in societies, nor can we stand in a superiority role with communities, nor can we send a group of scientists to a community to explain Avogadro's numbers, so to speak. That doesn't work in that way. On the contrary, it would backfire on us. We need to discuss, exchange ideas, listen to questions, to fears, and even needs people have in communities, and start off from some sort of common ground so that we can have constructive dialogue. It is for that reason that we consider it is important to have a multidisciplinary group of professionals, key opinion leaders that can establish a discussion with communities at large. Young people and women are vital. Why is that so? Because young people, women, and minority groups are more identifiable with the general audience. The younger generations, on their part, due to the era of information they were born in, have an inherent attitude where they challenge absolutely everything. When a young person supports something, there is this generation of implicit trust that is generated. This is why this audience is key as a key opinion leader. On the other hand, diversity is fundamental when it comes to communicating and interacting effectively with the general audience. This brings about an environment of inclusion where creativity flourishes and our perspectives are grown. Not-for-profit organizations such as IYNC or the Women in Nuclear have a very remarkable role to play to promote diversity and bring about bonds that are objective between the public in general and the nuclear industry. Next one, please. On the other hand, and this is something that we typically talk about quite extensively, we have to stop talking to ourselves. We have to rule out publicly held concerns, and we have to stop a defensive role. That is not feasible anymore. We have to walk away from our comfort zone. And rather than using this mutually exclusive dialogue or this polarizing rhetoric, our language has to move forward to a global view, how our energy can be integrated with other sources of energy, such as renewables. It is imperative for us in the industry to call upon other associations, groups that are outside from the nuclear industry. When it comes to that, we consider that it is absolutely timely to engage in discussions with communities and stakeholder groups to have remarkable groups such as the public audience before we extended the life cycle of the Embalse power plant. It is now up and running at full power or at full steam. Today, the industry and the country discussed the reconstruction of a new power plant, the fourth one in the country, and we consider it is vital for us to keep developing the sector and developing the economy of Argentina. We consider that this type of projects is very relevant to create new job positions and to form new leaders, future leaders in the sector. Projects of this nature favor the discussion of advantages that nuclear energy poses to society and the development of the country. The industry has to generate this type of spaces of discussions, to listen to what communities have to claim, and to talk about the advantages of nuclear energy. But for that to be the case, we need to work together with those who are part of the nuclear sector in Argentina. And in this area, I consider that it is vital to get on board the young people who are in the sector so that they can work in these projects. Along these lines, the contribution to contribute to the social license has to do with focusing on our people, engaging in a dialogue with young people, young professionals, because after all, they are the prospective politicians, prospective business owners. They are the future scientists. In other terms, they are the future leaders of our society who will tomorrow validate the efforts we are making today. In concluding, I'd like to say that we young people that are part of AHNA, the Association of Young People in the Nuclear Energy, we believe in technology. Our role, that of other young people, contribute, creating a positive effect in the world we are living in today. Nuclear energy in Argentina and around the world does benefit society. It contributes significantly to minimize effects of climate change. The time has come for our industry to stop talking with its own members, to understand how important it is to open up to community, to talk on first-term basis, to stop being anonymous heroes so that societies can see how much we can achieve as long as we work jointly, because that is the key for us to get approval and endorsement of people. So thank you so much for your attention and for inviting me and for the space you've given me to engage in this discussion and to share this panel with such remarkable people in the area of outreach and dissemination. I'll gladly remain on hold for questions. Thank you, Tomás, and thank you to the organizers. Thank you, Gustavo, so much for such a remarkable presentation. I have so many things jotted down that I ran out of paper. I mean, I thank you. You've given it all your flesh, as we say in Argentina. 2 or 3 highlights that I think are very interesting. Of course, the role you mentioned of young people and young women, the encouragement and the multiplying effect that can be the case in social media. And I really liked the idea of time. That is a very important measure to consider. Time and the speed, acceleration and deacceleration, when to speed up, when to slow down, and the backfiring effect that could eventually have in some situations. So I think it is really very interesting to see how to apply and how to slowly construct or build such a social license. So I thank you again, and I will now move on to the last speaker this morning that will be presented by Pilar Sanchez Barreno. She has been, since the year 2000, the Director of Training and Support to the industry of nuclear industry in Spain. She has a degree in technology on energy and environmental impact by the Complutense University in Madrid. She was in part of the Big Bang antimatter particles in CERN, Switzerland. She currently is studying humanities in the Madrid University. She is the founder and coordinator of the Committee of Energy, Training and Education. She's a member of the Education, Training and Knowledge Management group from Foratom in Brussels. She coordinates the Task Force on Training and Knowledge Management of SEIDEN. And she also, in 2005, was awarded as the best speaker in the annual meeting of the Nuclear Society in Spain with her paper, Treating Nuclear Energy in Textbooks. And since 2009 on, she has delighted us with her internet page. She created the educational corner at www.rinconeducativo.org. So Pilar, thank you so much for joining us and for sharing time with us in the now colder Madrid, as you were just telling us. So go ahead with your presentation. Thank you. It's my pleasure to share with my 3 panel members and with you and Julián Gadano, whom I had the possibility to meet in Buenos Aires 2 or 3 years ago in a person-to-person meeting that we organized at that time. It is my pleasure because I was my life devoted to talk about dissemination of nuclear energy. Is it utopia or is it reality? We all go out of our ways to achieve a common goal, to be accepted as nuclear energy at all levels of society. And it is my pleasure to see that the Nuclear Forum is doing the same with organizations such as Wind Global, such as IAEA, or as Nuclear Youth. I would like to briefly explain what Foro Nuclear is. This is the association I belong. It works through 4 or 5 key areas: communication, education, training, industry support, technical support, and Nuclear Energy Committee. We want to strengthen the operation of nuclear power plants, disseminate nuclear energy among different groups, cooperate with other educational organizations to promote scientific professions and gender equality in the nuclear sector. And we also want to promote activities of nuclear energy abroad. The target audience of all of those here is the same. On the one hand, politicians for whom we organize meetings and workshops. We also are in contact with the media, with the press, through personal interviews of our president with the key media in the country. We ask them to visit facilities and we publish articles of opinions on newspapers. We focus a lot on the educational sector, as we'll go to see in more detail later on. And another goal is to get the buy-in of society. We organize lectures and disseminate publications so that we will get the buy-in of nuclear energy on their part. We use different dissemination channels. We have a web page. You see this interview to Dominique Mouliot as the chairperson of WIN Global. She was published on our newsletter, and I wanted to show her image so you see that we are permanently abreast of times. Please do visit this because it contains a lot of remarkable information that can be very useful for all of you. We talk about a number of different topics. We just don't want to talk about nuclear, but we want to integrate this as part among all the current dated issues in the production of energy.
Utilizamos las redes sociales. Tenemos distintos canales, distintas redes sociales como Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn y conseguimos que nos sigan 13.000 seguidores a través de ellas. Realizamos eventos con personalidades con el objetivo de poner en valor la energía nuclear y conseguir una buena aceptación por parte de la prensa. El año pasado
we were able to carry out two. Michael Schellenberger, as we saw before, with the nuclear associations, and we also had the presence of Thelma Crook, the vice president of IPCC, who presented the last report that has been issued. These activities, unfortunately so, had to be called off because of the pandemic, but we will keep having this in the future. We are supported on a number of different publications. We have the newsletter that aims at 4,000 members, infography, as was expressed before by Susan from IAEA, and then we have publications to political audiences such as Results and Perspectives, where we show the reality of nuclear industry for 1 year, and we use it together with the Vademecum on Energy 2020 in order to give this to politicians. In an industrial level, we have this catalog for the Spanish industry where we give value to our companies. We use it for international relations, both with the Spanish embassy abroad and with embassies from other countries in Spain. A very, very remarkable audience for us is the sector of teachers, students, and professors alike. We created 10 years ago, 8 to 10 years ago, a web page that's called Educational Corner, Rincón Educativo. It is at this URL address where we offer educational resources on energy and environment for different target audiences. The purpose of this page that was put together by professors, being targeted to professors, is to facilitate some information that can be interesting so that they can use it while lecturing in their classes. It is not a ready-made class, but it helps them a lot so that it is for them far easier to explain nuclear energy and the various types of energy. We receive plus 1 million visits every year. This increases considerably. And as you can see on the bottom of this screen, out of the 10 first countries that connect to this corner, 9 of them are from Latin America. Mexico always leads the ranking. Argentina and Spain, well, are the second positions every now and then, but as you see, you are very active. The educational corner has different areas: congresses, educational resources, visits, virtual classrooms. And through these activities, we try to disseminate current information, objective information on all these technologies. The virtual classroom was created in 2016. Since then, we have held plus 50 courses. We have trained plus 2,000 professors. These are free of charge formats with a Moodle format. And at the end, we talk about the same thing: energy at large, nuclear energy and radiological protection, protection of the environment, the application of nuclear technology. And we lately have been talking a lot about robotics in the nuclear field. I should say that in robotics, we've had GDES from Spain to help us, the one where Dominic works, because they have a very specialized field of robotics, and they've helped us a lot in setting this course up and running and in creating tutorials. We specialize in different types of audiences, but our target audience is professors for secondary education, professors having students between 12 and 18 years of age, because they are the ones that focus on this much more. In connection to educational resources, here we have some examples of materials that we put together for different audiences: for primary education from 6 to 12, secondary education from 12 to 18 years of age, and other sectors, not just for high school, but for university and public at large. We work with monographies such as that of Chernobyl, fusion, electric vehicles, nuclear security, the interactive periodic table of elements, and we administer this in small doses. Professors who just want to have access to specific information on any safety or security information, they don't have to go into the detail. We just give them in small chapters so they can use it. They also have games, and also protection issues are touched upon. I'll go into the educational corner. On the section of educational resources, teachers can choose the subject matter they want to regard. There's quite a variety of subjects. They can choose the level this will be addressed to, the origin. We just don't publish resources of our own, but from students and professors from other educational webs, and based on type of materials, by images, by infographics, theories, characters, cartoons. We want to make their role easier so that they can avail themselves of these materials. The majority of the content is in Spanish, but there is 25 to 30% of the content that has been already translated into English. This is a very general example of a radiological protection project. This is a part addressed to primary education, another one addressed to secondary education, and there is one addressed to professors and teachers, where we show them how to put this in practice in the classroom based on the time assigned to them. This can be done in a week, in one full course, or in 15 days, and grounds to the project based on different subject matters, based on basic competencies, not just energy, but mathematics, geography, etc. And then they work with the final goal in mind, which is a little bit more fun and practical for children, where this activity for primary students is to visit a radiology department in a hospital. So they have to get ready in advance to see what they will see, how much they have to put up with, and also a Geiger countimeter for secondary students. We have this educational newsletter that we distribute to plus 2,300 contacts. We place the key news on the web, and we also have opened a Twitter account. We are happy because we have plus 1,800 followers, and the number of them continues on the rise. We also collaborate with other entities. We take part in different task forces, and we have programs for training with IAEA, with LANENT, the Latin American Network for Training in Energy and Nuclear Technology, and we help with NIEA of OECD. With IAEA, We take part in different projects, training people on nuclear science and technology. We are part of the panel of expert speakers on the course Train the Trainers on nuclear science and technology. The purpose is being the ones on the screen to promote knowledge of nuclear energy by training the trainers and facilitating teaching resources and ICT tools that they can use at the classroom, that they can use for developing their own projects. Their own projects are being stored in a repository of teaching material on these topics by country. And the purpose is to create, together with IAEA, a repository for all countries in the LANENT network, consisting of Latin America and the Caribbean. We have had 2 courses in person in Costa Rica and Uruguay, and we had planned to carry out one in Chile by late this year. That got postponed because of the pandemic, but was actually resized and was done online. We also do interactive material. They all are in Spanish, some of them are in English. You find these in our educational corner. These talk about current topic issues such as the ones that you can see on the screen. What about the advantages of these laminated cards? These are laminated cards that can be worked upon at 3 levels of detail. We can use them as a simple card that the teacher can use in the classroom. Another one is that through these QRLs, you may go to a link to the sector in educational corner, and then IAEA or the LANENT network can share infography or videos to go deeper into the knowledge. And through these QRs, they can also have a self-directed course promoted by LANENT. You may go, the person can check how much they have made progress. We also take part in mentoring workshops organized by NEA from OECD. The first in Europe took place in Spain, in Avida, 2 years ago, together with Win Spain. And this was opened by the general director of the agency, Mr. Magwood, with all the mentors that took part in the program. We were women representatives of the industry. 2 were conducted in Spain this year. This won't be possible, but we'll go back to this activity next year because it was very remarkable and it was very appreciated by all students. On average, 50 students of secondary education took part in this. And in concluding, I'd like to talk about a project that we have just started. We have a lot of hopes when it comes to that. Learn with awareness and learn with science. It's a pun on words in Spanish because people who take part in this will not just get exposed to science, but will be conscious or aware of science. This is directed to the general audience, and I'd like you to take part in the next conference that will take place next Tuesday, 20th of October, 6:30 p.m. Spanish time on radon gas, the great unknown gas, by an expert who measures radon. And if you want to sign up, you will have to register at Educational Corner, where there is a banner with all the information, and then you will have to complete the sign-in file so you participate. We would be delighted to see you there and to join us. And with this, I conclude, and I remain available to your questions if you're interested. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Pilar, for your excellent presentation with a lot of knowledge, lots of invitations to a number of events. We'll make sure to be there. Thank you on that. I think it was quite remarkable to see how many materials you've developed. These interactive cards, the laminated cards, are remarkable. And while you were talking, I imagined how it would be like to use this in a classroom and how it can change the dynamics with young people with their mobiles. It is far more accessible. And the relevance of these educational developments and to get started from a very young age to be exposed and get familiar with such things. It is very interesting indeed. Thank you. Thank you for that presentation. I now have quite a number of questions, a heap of them. I'll have to prune and select in my capacity as a moderator. I may have that privilege to choose. So if you think it's suitable, I'll choose a couple of questions that will get addressed to each one of you. So I'll ask the question, you'll answer, and then I'll move on to the next question if you agree with it. So let's follow the order in which these questions were asked based on the order of presentations. But before that, thank you to all four of you, because it's been a very nice panel with a lot of content, with a variety of things. I have two questions for Zuzi to get started, and I'll read literally. The person asking the question says, your initiative with young people is very interesting, the one that you developed with the Department of Energy in the United States. Do you think it is possible to develop any such initiatives in other contexts, such as in Latin America, for example? That's my first question, but I'd like to ask another question to you, Zuzi. The second question is, which, in your opinion, are the main attractive characteristics that nuclear industry can offer the young people so as to promote acceptance on their part and attract them in participating on nuclear projects? So the first one, Latin America, is the program applicable? And the second is, what is the enticing role that energy has for the young people?
Excellent questions. Thank you so much. I want to say for the Millennial Nuclear Caucuses, we designed those in mind that they could be, that format and that brand could be applied anywhere in the world. And so I extend that to you and let you know that we put those on. We did one in Tokyo, Japan at the Tokyo Institute of Technology. We had over 100 students there. It was a great success. And being that we were at an IFNEC meeting that time, we had presenters and subject matter experts from all over the world to participate also. So that was a really special event. And they are very scalable. So I would suggest that if you want to put on a Millennial Nuclear Caucus, you're welcome to do that. If you want to do it in conjunction with the U.S. Department of Energy, you can contact the Office of Nuclear Energy and talk to the folks who do the logistical work and find out how they do it. And you could partner formally if you want and have a memorandum of understanding together, which is a very flexible agreement. Or you could just go and do your own Millennial Nuclear Caucus. And some of the essential elements are to make it an interactive communications event, to make it fun and engaging for the participants, to have subject matter experts in place who can have a conversation and be relevant to the young people who are there. And then also we like to have a Twitter wall at each event so that people can watch and chime in from Twitter or do a Facebook Live in addition. So there's interaction from social media during those events. So I would suggest go right ahead, put on your own Millennial Nuclear Caucus. They can spread all over the world. So that's great. The second question is a great question, and this is my personal opinion. What I think are the main benefits for young people in getting to know nuclear, I think definitely the impact for climate change is something that young people respond to very positively when they start to learn about nuclear. I think the ability to create clean energy systems, because I think a lot of young people are very positive about renewables. And so if you can talk about pairing nuclear with renewables in complete clean energy systems, and it's an easy way to point out the intermittency of renewables, which is a fact of life, and that nuclear can be a baseload source 24/7 and is also a carbon-free source of energy. That often leads to the question about spent fuel. And I think we have a good story to tell about the reality of spent fuel. And so that opens up a whole pathway to talk about climate change, the solution through nuclear. And then the next thing that I think a lot of people of all ages respond to in conversations that I have is the innovation of the advanced reactor designs today. So the smaller designs, when the small modular reactors, even in the US, they are developing a application of a mobile microreactor that can be used by the Department of Defense. And then even some of the very small microreactors can be put in outer space and on the moon and in other planets to power space missions, like physically be the power source in the moon, on the moon or on Mars. And so I think those technology advancements are also a very interesting, eye-opening benefit that many people don't know about. Thanks for the questions.
Muchísimas gracias, Susie, por esa respuesta tan...
Thank you so much, Susie, for such a good and comprehensive reply. And since we are here, I invite you, we last week had a conversation like this on issues that have to do with innovations, and we talked about SMRs. So I invite you to click on that other lecture so you can then talk about that. I will now move on to Dominic, and I'll read the question. Dominic, in the last few years, we've seen a growing participation and move of women in a number of different fora, including the nuclear environment. Which are the main challenges in the short term, and what bonds do you appreciate when promoting a greater gender perspective in nuclear energy and the strengthening of nuclear projects? The main challenges and how to promote gender in the nuclear energy. Thank you.
So the main challenges of Wind Global, you are meaning, is the question?
Sí, en realidad podría ser de Wind.
Well, it could be about Wind Global or in general, women in the nuclear environment. Any of the two things that you may decide to touch upon.
Okay, so I think that it's very important for Wind Global to communicate a lot and to be very present on the social networks, because we think that when women are speaking to the public, they get the trust of the public. And today we are really extending our presence in the world. And we see that more and more women are aware of the role they can play to promote the nuclear energy and to give confidence to the public when they express themselves, when they speak, when they go to the contact of the students, of the young generation, when they speak with other associations. So I think that it's very important for us to communicate more and more, and also to use social medias, but also to use the words of the young generation and to communicate also through the young generation, because they have their way to do it, and they are very active, and we think that it's really for us a challenge, because what do we need? We need to be visible, more visible, to work on our message, on our identity, and to be recognized as a network of experts, and to be to get a legitimacy, to be invited in many occasions, and organization by also many organizations. So for us, it's really a big challenge. And this challenge goes through the communication. As far as the gender is concerned, what we are developing within Wind Global and everywhere in Wind Global chapters or countries is really to attract young people in our sector and to encourage young ladies to join a nuclear sector and to be aware of the interest for their career to be involved in this sector, and that we can really work on the gender together and participate also to European tenders treating of the gender issue. So it's something that we are doing, we have done since a long time, and we think that we have really now to do it and to be part of many organizations in the world to put on the table the gender issue, but as an advantage and not as a difference.
Muchísimas gracias, Dominique, por esa respuesta tan completa.
Thank you so much, Dominic, for such a complete answer. Thank you. You made it very clear. Now, let's quickly move on to the two questions for Gustavo and Leo. Do you think that the nuclear industry is adapting successfully to reach the young effectively? Are there any barriers that the industry must overcome? What's the key role that civil society organizations can play? It's all part of the same question. It's two short questions in one. So, second question, pointing out what you said, not just talking internally amongst us within the sector, but opening up to other sectors. How do we do that, they ask. Many times it is said there's too much anti-nuclearism, that's what the word used, in the media. Can you answer that? Yes, thank you so much for the questions and for listening to us, most of all. First of all, I point out on a personal basis, something I enjoy in the nuclear industry is the resilience capacity we have. Nowadays, it sounds a cliche, it's a fab word, but the world is under an uncommon situation. It has forced all individuals and organizations to reinvent themselves, to stand up and move forward whatever we face. And the nuclear industry in Argentina is constantly evolving. Our nuclear industry, we are proud to have nuclear developments in Argentina. That started 70 years ago. We adapt to the young, I believe. There's plenty of room for development opportunities for the young in Argentina. You know that in Argentina, we have the course of studies on nuclear engineering by the Instituto Balseiro in Bariloche in Patagonia. So we develop professionals, we educate professionals for the nuclear sector. And in the last few years, we had several projects developed, like the construction of a reactor led by the National Commission of Nuclear Energy, the first modular small reactor that we are putting together as well. And we are extending the life cycle of Embalse, and Atucha 2 is also being commissioned. So this develops people's skills. And if we draw a timeline of projects in Argentina, I think the industry is adapting to provide opportunities for the young. But however, we should not neglect this, never. We should always be looking for new areas of opportunity, new areas to improve, to reach all, the young, women, and it is extremely important in this regard in that second question, I think they referred to that. Civil society organizations in this regard are key support for us because from there we can set up conversations with community, with the broader industry, identifying the needs of the youth within the industry. That on the one hand. And your other question, can you remind me? How to come out of our own bubble to speak to other sectors when there's anti-nuclear feeling in the media. Well, that is precisely the reason why I decided to come to the nuclear industry or to develop my professional career here. It's always been interesting, a personal challenge to take something which is so complex like nuclear energy to the non-expert lay population. Most people just say no, and people who oppose to it is because they don't have all information. And I point out what Susie said in her presentation. It is so important to know your audience, to set up communication and open up discussions and conversations. I think I mentioned earlier, we use our heroes, that is, we show our anonymous heroes. There's a feeling of pride in young professionals in the nuclear sector. And I think that sense of pride when they do their job is a good way of starting a communication with the general population to see what opportunities can be found and the important contribution that the nuclear sector makes to society against climate change in particular. Within our sector, no doubt, I believe that the nuclear industry is helping make the world a better place, and technology and nuclear developments have a positive effect in society. This type of a message is very important to communicate, but always with the idea to exchange ideas and to discuss, to create a debate. We need to set up a conversation where we listen to all parts. I give my point of view, pause, I get a reply. If we set up a conversation like that, it will only be positive. Thank you, very clear answer. And finally, a question for Pilar. What do you think are the main challenges or demands to expand its social license or attractiveness, to make it more attractive? I think that in each country we face different problems. In Spain, our problem is to obtain the political support for nuclear energy. If we had political support, we would have more room for opening up a frank conversation with the media and with society. There's a preconceived image, certain taboos like waste, and there's collectives, not anti-nuclear, but collective groups within society where if you explain and explain, you cannot reach any positive results because even with positive information, they take it as something very negative. And nuclear energy is not well analyzed in textbooks at schools. It is only mentioned briefly. They only talk about Chernobyl or Fukushima or nuclear weapons. So the only positive perspective on nuclear energy is in the use of medicine, but the rest of applications in agriculture and food production, it's only dealt with briefly at school levels. Thank you so much, Pilar, for your answer. I want to thank the 4 speakers for their wonderful presentations and the wonderful dialogue we've had in the Q&A session. Before wrapping up, I would like to invite the director of our program to wrap up the meeting with some closing remarks. Julian, would you please take the floor? Thank you, Tomás. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Tomás, for leading the discussion. I want to thank all of you, represented by the 4 speakers of the day. We've had 4 meetings, and you've provided us with your time, with wonderful presentations. I know you all have very busy agendas. We started planning about a month ago with the director of OECD and nuclear energy, where Argentina is a member. I want to thank everyone. You have all generously provided your time in uncomfortable times, because we had the west coast of the US and Ding Zhang. It was midnight in Beijing, and he was talking to us as well. So we must be very thankful, of course. Thank you so much to our 4 speakers. We have enjoyed your presentations. We are all very well acquainted with you, and we know how seriously you approach and so much passion you approach the topic. 2 brief comments about content. First, we are very proud of having mentioned the gender perspective here in our industry. The gender participation in our panels has been equal, men and women. I'm sorry if it wasn't exactly equal, but I know we heard from many women. There are many strong women in this industry we can learn from. It's just a matter of giving them the space to teach to all of us from their experience. In practice, working with such an important matter, which is so important for our country and in the world, in our industry, including gender perspective, is great. About content, when we organized the agenda, we had 3 concepts that became 3 panels: climate change, innovation, and social licensing. Social licensing means people feel attracted to nuclear stuff. And I think social license, I would like to have social love, not just being tolerated, but being loved. It's like saying my wife will tolerate me. She'll keep up with me. I want her to love me, not just to bear me. So about the 3 concepts on climate change, if we don't do something, that's the next social tragedy we will face. World countries are not meeting the Paris Agreement. It's been 20 years. And as an expert, all experts, they're all convinced that it's hard to meet the Paris Accord without nuclear energy, which is clean, and with the corresponding technology innovations, it's a great partner of renewables. Some changes must occur, of course, but there's room for that. But the nuclear sector, the nuclear industry should take steps to provide answers which are different to the answers we provided in the last 70 years. Not that the answers of the past were wrong, but we are responding in a different context. Today, we generate energy completely different to the way we generated in the past. We have the revolution of the renewables. The world has changed. The world needs nuclear energy, but we need to rethink nuclear energy for the new world and its new consumption. Innovating is not science, and science is not innovating, not necessarily. You can innovate when you work. You can use public transportation, electric vehicles. We'll innovate in this in our coexistence with the pandemic, innovating, doing things differently to reach better and different results. Innovating in science means working from those perspectives, respecting the scientific method, the way of building knowledge, and at the same time doing it innovatively so that nuclear energy provides answers to climate change. Energy, whether directly or through transportation, is 53% of negative contributions to climate change. So something must be done. Nuclear energy, which is very active, believe me, small reactors, modular reactors. Gustavo mentioned something of what's being done in Argentina in that regard. And of course, this cuts across different administrations. That's actually wonderful that we continue like that. And then the social science. I'll point out some similarities with the air and space industry. Like ours, they manage risk. That's a point in common we have. However, when there's an airplane accident, the industry is not questioned, but the nuclear industry has that problem. The air and space industry has many things in common and had to rebuild itself. People love flying. It has appeal. It is wonderful. It's attractive. It implies that you can move around and change. I love planes. I love flying. It's something I enjoy. The air and space industry is appealing because of that. The nuclear industry, unfortunately, has a problem there. It doesn't have that appeal. It is appealing in the sense that you can bring students to nuclear power plants and the kids are fascinated. People are fascinated. There's so much technology, so much human work, research, development, and employment in it. There's economic development behind the commodity that is energy. So we need to look for ways to appeal to everyone so that everyone falls in love with us. And it's not just a matter of reinventing us, it's just showing the right sides and the appropriate sides of our work. If I visit a family member in Neuquén, I want to go visit my father, he's in Neuquén. Or if I want to have a work meeting to close a deal, travel and visit friends. If I want to satisfy needs, I take a plane and I quickly go wherever I want. With nuclear energy, people turn a switch and a factory starts and they turn on the engine of their electric car. Millennials don't wonder where energy comes from when they use their devices. Nuclear energy is clean. It implies technology development. It's constantly 24 hours running, year round. It's constantly running for us, and it implies that you're constantly doing technology developments. We need to show what we do. So we need to not just obtain a social license, but to appeal and show why nuclear industry is necessary. Nuclear industry is necessary in a clean world. And I'm inspired by Gustavo. Let's stop talking amongst us. Let's talk out of our bubble. That's key. We are part of an interconnected world with needs. We are citizens of the world. The things I've seen in meetings of the youth, like millennials invite me and Congress of the Youth. These are citizens of the world, people working who have employment issues, who are happy, sad. They face global problems too. And nuclear energy is part of the solution. But to be part of the solution, we need to constantly reinvent ourselves to be up to the standards. It's been a great luxury to share with you. I've learned so much from all the speakers. I hope you've enjoyed it too. And once again, thank you so much Tomás for being the moderator today. Thanks to our 4 speakers of the day. Gustavo, you're a male minority today. I'm glad to see that. Thank you all so much. Tomás, you can close the panel. Thank you. Thanks again, Julián, for your closing remarks. Thanks to the speakers. And so we formally conclude today's meeting. Be safe in such a complex moment worldwide, and thank you again.